Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vegan Business Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Fox. My guest today is James McInnes, co-founder of Odd Burger vegan fast food chain in Ontario, Canada. Now, James, who was a software executive, was diagnosed with high blood pressure in 2014 and changed his lifestyle for the better by going vegan. He and his wife, Leah, began developing their own plant-based meats and were soon selling vegan meal kits featuring local ingredients. But they couldn't shake the idea that what the world needed was vegan fast food at a price that could compete with animal foods. In 2016, they debuted a food truck with a chickpea burger they called the Big McInnes, after James's surname, earning them, wait for it, a cease and desist from McDonald's. And they knew they were onto something. Now, formerly called Globally Local, Odd Burger produces its own meat and dairy alternatives for use in its restaurants. In April 2021, the company went public and plans to have 20 locations by this time next year. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Wow, you've had quite the journey in just a few years, from having the concept to going public and really kind of scaling up. So before we get into that, the business side, I've just got to ask, because I know people are going to be thinking this. You went vegan for your health, but fast food isn't necessarily always associated with health. So just tell us a little bit about that briefly, and why you believe that the fast food category is the right place to disrupt the food industry.
Yeah, I think initially I went vegan for health reasons, and for me, it's turned into an ethical reason. Hence the fast food component. I think the more vegan I became, the more that I like the idea of a vegan fast food chain. So
I appreciate your honesty,
so to speak, right? So, but yeah, I think there was a shift for me from obviously doing it for health reasons to doing it primarily now for animals and the environment. So. That's primarily why I'm vegan, and that's why I think that's why we got into the fast food space, and I think the reason that we love the fast food space is just I think it's the transformative power of that industry, and and also I think the deep cultural connection that we all have to fast food. There is a very deep cultural connection that we have, and I think it comes from maybe our childhood and our upbringings, that kind of stuff. And I think what I love about it is that the idea that you can change culture and you can change, you can change how people think, obviously, and they can do that through fast food. I think it's a great channel of doing that. So that's why we are in the fast food space. It's just the power of making change. I think is tremendous. And to be honest, there's really very few other people doing it. I think at a big scale.
Got it. And I suppose at the end of the day, vegan fast food is healthier and better than animal-based fast food. So you get a tick there. So you started with the vegan meal kits, and you learned that people loved your fast food recipe. So you started the food truck, and then you got the letter from McDonald's, the cease and desist. So tell us a bit about that. Like, what happened when you got it? Did you consider fighting it? I know they're a big multinational corporation, but it is your surname. So I'm just curious about what you decided to do and how you've actually managed to leverage it regardless.
Yeah, I guess when you're, I think being a startup, we were always very like that scrappy, rebellious type of organization, and we still are, to be honest. I always consider us somewhat of an activist organization because our mission is very much ethically aligned. So, but I think initially when we first got that cease and desist order, it's scary as a small business. You get like 100-page document. With all this evidence, and we've infringed on this here and that there. So because to be honest though, we were happy in a way to get it, because I think what it showed is that there is something that they're afraid of, and there's something that is scary to them too. And I think what's scary to these people who are exploiting the planet and are destroying the world is that there's someone that can do that, can say provide the same type of fast food experience without doing that in a sustainable way, in a kind way. And I think that is scary to them. I think the fast food chains are all trying to position themselves now as this well, I guess I'll call it the sustainable myth. that McDonald's somehow can make a hamburger from a cow sustainable. It's obviously not possible. So I think there was that deep sort of that deep threat, obviously, and also, to be honest, just these big companies have to defend their marks anyway. It's just kind of for them, like, I don't think it's anything personal. It's just that this is just part of being a big company. You need it. If you don't defend your mark, then you lose it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of both, but for us, it kind of told us something and really motivated us to go down that path more, I think, and explore it. And that's kind of has taken us to here. So we didn't really consider fighting it because honestly, we at the time, there's no way we could have hired lawyers and all that kind of stuff to fight it. And it's just easier to kind of give up and to say, okay, we'll change the name. So, and that's what we did. We just kind of moved on. So.
And you changed it, which I quite like, to the famous burger, and you've actually leveraged what happened, even though you had to change the name. You've leveraged what happened, and I guess that can be a talking point. Like if people say, "Well, what is a famous? Why have you called it the famous burger?" You've got that little kind of backstory.
Yeah, and I think that led into a whole bunch of funny menu items where you're kind of now you're in this situation where you're kind of like making fun of it all, and that's, well, who can guess what the famous burger is? And I think it actually ended up being better in many ways, both for the brand and for the interest, and also just, I think, from just having a bit of sense of humor, which I think is always a good thing with any brand, is
definitely
that sort of funny side, something that people can connect with and have a little laugh about, and it's always good to have.
I love that. So hopefully there's a bit of inspiration for anyone. If you do get a cease and desist from any of the big companies, think how you can leverage that and use it as a talking point. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, James. So you ran the food truck. You started with the food truck. How long did you run the food truck for before you decided to open your first restaurant location? And what did you learn from running the food truck in opening the restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, we probably ran the food truck for about only 4 months before we opened up our first brick and mortar. So we got the food truck in 2016 and probably September, and by the end of December, we opened our first restaurant.
Why did you decide to do that? Like, why did you not continue for longer with the food truck? What made you go, no?
In Canada, it's cold, so you can't run a food truck in the winter up here anyway. Not that I haven't seen anyone try it. You'd probably freeze to death on the truck, because the metal floors just suck all the heat out. So basically, is because we had such strong demand for what we're doing, and we knew that we had two options: either close up, open next season in the spring, wait for winter to be over, or we kind of go and get a brick and mortar, allowing us to operate all year. So that's what we did. We ended up finding a place that we sort of took over their lease, and we launched our first brick and mortar just so we could continue operating, because there was such strong demand for what we were doing. We didn't want to lose that kind of momentum and leave people hanging for their cravings, because they get very angry when they can't satisfy their fast food cravings. So,
and especially in winter as well, you want that comfort food as
absolutely.
well. You don't want sure.
Totally.
Now, I noticed, James, you got currently on your website, it says you currently got about 5 restaurants, with a couple more due to open in Ontario. Can you talk us through how you scaled your restaurant business? Because running one restaurant business, is kind of pretty full on, but to actually have several. So how did you manage to do that? And how did you know when and where to open each restaurant so that it would be sustainable?
So, I guess you start with the food, because to scale any restaurant, you need consistent food, and that's the most important thing. So what we developed is we launched a food manufacturing center in 2018, because we knew that, especially in fast food, consistency is everything. People literally just want the same thing forever. They don't want you to change it. They don't want anything different. They just want it the same every single time, wherever they are. That's the magic of fast food, actually. So we really worked on that consistency by taking out, virtually all, like none of the food is really made in the restaurant. It's finished in the restaurant. We call the restaurant, or like where we actually finish the food. But really, all the proteins are manufactured by us in our own manufacturing center. And the proteins are specially made to match our cooking equipment in the restaurant. So we can cook made-to-order food in like under a minute. So that's kind of, it's a bit of obviously magic with that. And then also the restaurant side, again, along with consistency, is making it simple. So it's always about simplifying your menu, simplifying your cooking process and your training process. So we focus a lot on that, like making things really easy to cook. And that's where, our smart kitchens come in. And we call them smart kitchens because everything is like push button pre-programmed. So you want to cook a burger, you put it in this special machine, you press a button, and it comes out in a minute, perfectly cooked every time. So like we haven't burned a burger in like 2 years ever since we launched this technology. So things that are typically a problem in the restaurant business, like, oh, my burger was overcooked or undercooked or whatever. Our food literally is always cooked the same because it's done by a computer, right? So our, again, my background in technology, our focus on technology, I think, was a big way that we were able to be consistent and to scale it because you need to develop the systems to scale any business, right? And that's where it's all about the technology. And being a technology expert myself, it really came in handy when I applied that knowledge to the restaurant industry.
Wow, I love that. What would happen that, like, given that tech is great when it works, but it's a disaster when it doesn't? So, I mean, how have you got anything in place that if the technology breaks down, like, are you still able to, carry on making stuff? Like, what happens if there's a crash, if you like?
For sure. I mean, all those are part of like any, it's like any good sort of like technology company will have redundancy plans, right? It's like, okay, for example, if our internet goes out, we can run offline. So we have, for example, like our restaurants they're primarily cashless. So we have all self-checkout. We actually don't have a cashier. It's all like we have the big kind of touch screens. But for example, if your internet goes down, then what happens? Well, we have like a dev machines that runs on the cellular network that can run offline to our internet, and the restaurant can run an offline mode. So you have a mode where you can run offline, for example. So a lot of that is about just having redundancies. Also, just having repair technicians available to come quickly, is the other thing. So we have service contracts where if something happens, like they're there in like a couple hours. So if it's a critical piece of machinery, like say our fryer goes down or something, because our fryer actually is a complex piece of machinery. It's a very advanced piece of equipment. It's not like your standard kind of restaurant fryer. It's more of a fast food fryer. So it's, again, a lot of computer stuff in there and a lot of automation. And when it breaks, then you can't fix it. You got to call somebody, sort of thing, most of the time. So again, I think it's part of just like setting up those plans of redundancy. But it's always a risk in any business, failure points, and it's something we're always like looking at, considering.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, fascinating with vegan fast food going high tech in that way. You mentioned that you got your smart kitchens, and you've also got the self-serve, so the self-checkout. And I guess, what are some of the advantages of that? I guess you need fewer staff, so I guess that can help the restaurant to be more sustainable. But again, I suppose you've got the challenges of people who might not know. Like, I know, for example, I use the self-serve checkout for the supermarket. If you put your bag in the wrong place, you get bagging alert, and then a member of staff has to come and fix it. And there's people who particularly come for the first time, and they're kind of like, what do I do? And they might be standing there staring at it. So how do you sort of navigate that, or how have you managed to navigate that?
Well, I think it's like any good service. It's any business in the service sector. Like, you have to still provide good service to customers. So it's like technology is not an excuse to kind of like provide that service. So, for us, I think having good technology actually allows our staff to provide better service because they can focus more on service and less on more of the redundant tasks that, say, like normally, like someone that's cooking a burger would do, or somebody that's like ringing someone in at a cash register. So if someone needs help with a kiosk, like a member of the staff can just come around and just help them out. You know what I mean? Help them to use it, or ring in the order for them at the kiosk. So that kind of stuff is just part of good service. And because our staff are more efficient, and they're able to, our kitchen actually is in the front of house, so customers can see us cooking. They can see the food. It's all right there, right? And all of our staff are all in front. There's no one like hidden at the back of the restaurant where you can't talk to anybody. All of our staff are there, and I think that having these kind of design elements and using our technology gives us that great service. And I think that's what customers love about coming to our restaurant. They get great service, great food. It's made fast, it's made consistently, it's priced right, all those kind of things. And you need all that to succeed. because you can't just be a high-tech restaurant and have, robots making things and have no service. That people, they want to feel like they're talking to a person, and because of all that, we're able to pay our staff more. They're able to make more in tips. They're able to make, so it benefits the staff too, right? The technology in many ways. And, for us, I know with COVID, it's been tough for people to get staff and retain staff, but we haven't had those problems because, again, we have I think a really compelling reason to work at our restaurant for anyone in the food industry. Obviously, it's vegan, which is a great reason to work here, but also it's I think our compensation is way above where others are in the food space. So.
Well, I love that. Now, you mentioned that you're able to keep the prices down. I know that's a big thing with vegan and plant-based foods, is trying to, particularly when you're going up against, the big kind of giants who, the prices are really low, really cheap. So how have you managed to do that? I noticed you mentioned earlier that you have your own production facility. So you're creating your own products rather than having to buy in like third-party burgers or, other stuff made by other companies. So can you talk a little bit about how you've managed to achieve that price parity?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it obviously the making the food is one of the big components, right? That we can really control the cost. I mean, we can't control all costs because we still have to buy the raw ingredients. So, I mean, we're not totally insulated from raw costs, but we are insulated from, if someone decides to increase the price of your burger, like, what are you going to do about it? There's not much you can do about it, right? So for us, we just control more of that supply chain, and that gives us more control over what we do. So for example, we recently did a lot of investment in our manufacturing center, and really, like, I think that's as an example, you become more efficient, right, in your manufacturing center. So you can reduce your own costs by investing into your processes, right? So those kind of things, I think, make a huge difference. And again, it's the investment in tech. It always comes back to the investment in technology, implementation of technology, whether that's at our manufacturing center or at our restaurant. That's how we stay competitive. We stay competitive because we have better technology, we're smarter, we have better systems, simpler systems, easier to deploy, easier to scale. Yes, there are savings in certain aspects with staff, but then again, we have more staff doing other things. So, I would say we're providing more higher skilled jobs, which I think is a good thing. You know what I mean? So, I think you kind of, when you put all that together, I think it allows us to really provide a product that is higher quality, lower cost, and ultimately better value for customers. And I don't think a lot of people are doing that in the plant-based space. I think that's a big kind of criticism, is that, like, oh, I need a veggie burger more often, but it's expensive. It's expensive to go to vegan restaurants. It's expensive to buy vegan proteins. It's all just really expensive. Which I know that's kind of part of that. The journey of I think of any new product is kind of, you start at a certain price point and you get that down with scalability. So I think it is improving, but again, it's always been our focus from the start. So I think it's pretty successful.
I love that. Now, how many of your current restaurants, because you've got a few, how many of those are franchises, and how many of those do you own outright at the moment?
So so we're just launching our 5th corporate store, and we have 1 franchise, and we have another franchise actually that's opening out west in Calgary, Alberta. So we are actually doing a lot more franchising, in addition to in conjunction with corporate stores. So it's part of our strategy, and for us, having a mixture of both, I think, is a good thing. So we are doing a big push in franchising as well. But
and why are you doing that, James? Like, why have you chosen the franchise model, and what's involved as well, I guess, in in someone wanting to buy a franchise from an existing business? Any tips you can offer there?
Well, a franchise is a great way of scaling, right? Because number one, it's less capital intensive for you as a company, because the franchisee is putting up the capital to invest in the store. And also, and most importantly, is that there is somebody that is on the ground, boots on the ground, in a geographic area that is very distant from you, right? Like, our management, sort of center of our management world is in, like, southwestern Ontario. If I want to open a restaurant in Vancouver that's, thousands of kilometers away. I could do that, but, I would have to hope and trust that I can create a management structure there, which, can be done. It's not like it's impossible. You can do it. But there's something amazing about having someone that's invested in the business, being that person that ultimately is going to make sure that operation is going to run well. Because the most important thing for us is that we are growing and that we are spreading, more plant-based food around the world. And franchising helps us do that, helps us scale out, right? So, and also it's that local knowledge, right? Like I don't necessarily know like all the intricacies of, every city, right? So when you're a local in that city, you understand the good areas, you understand, the best times to be open. There's certain things that and there's a network there that you have that we all have to our local communities, and I think that really taps into that. So anyone that's looking for a franchise, in our company, there's information on our website. You can go to our website and go to the About section. It answers a bunch of questions like, here's how much the investment is, here's how much it costs. It is obviously a significant investment, but then again, I feel like it's a great business. So, and it's a growing business. It's a growing industry, right? So it's an early time to get into this sector, I think. And I think it's you kind of have the advantage of first to market, which I think is a big advantage, right? So if you can open, say, the first vegan fast food restaurant in wherever it is, like, Dallas, Texas, or wherever it is, I think I think that's a compelling, that's something that's very compelling as a franchisee, when you're looking at different concepts. So that's kind of like the background of that. So but anyone that's interested, I think, in developing their business as a franchise, and it takes a lot of time, effort. You have to really focus on the systems, and again, you have to make it easy for someone else to operate. And I think we've spent many years, working on that. So because we want it to be easy to operate for ourselves.
Right. And I think it's good that you've got more than one business, because sometimes I see businesses that have maybe got one restaurant and then they're like, oh yeah, I want to expand and do a franchise. But it's like, well, you've only proved that you can run one restaurant. And I think because you've got several, you've proved that you can do that. So it kind of gives the franchisee more confidence, and then you give them all the training. And like they say, they're buying into that whole system, and it's almost like a plug and play kind of thing. So
well, yeah, because the thing is, most franchisees, they want to be multi-store operators. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the name of the game in franchising, right? Like it's okay to have one restaurant, but it's better to have 10. You know what I mean? It's just, so we need to show people how to run 10 restaurants, right?
Yeah.
Because if we don't know how to do it, if we haven't done it ourselves, like how can we ever show anyone how to do it?
Exactly.
So, it's just one of those things that that's what we're doing now. We're running a bunch of restaurants, and it's going great, basically. So, which is good. And I think as any franchisee, when you look at that system, you need to have that kind of vision, and you need to see that it's possible. Especially in there, like we're still in the early stages of franchising. So, and obviously as you grow, and now we have other franchisees open 5 stores or 10 stores. Then I think you start to really get a lot of momentum in the franchising field, because people sort of say, well, hey, if this guy or this woman did it, like I can maybe do it too, right? So it's that's kind of what it's all about, is that having that model for them to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you see, you've, as you mentioned, you've achieved a lot. Like you've literally, scaled quite quickly already so far, and I know you've got bigger plans. But can you talk about, and I know it's been going really well, which is great, but can you talk about some of the challenges that you've experienced? Because I don't want people to think, oh, this is just super easy, I'm going to do this. If you can just talk through, especially because this wasn't your background. I believe you were a software executive, and I know you've implemented that into the restaurant business, which is great. But just tell us a little bit about maybe a couple of the challenges you've experienced, and what advice do you have for anyone who's looking to launch and scale a business?
Yeah, it's the easiest part of the business is starting it. It's kind of like that's like the easy part. I know people think like, oh, and don't get me wrong, it is also hard to start a business. It's hard to going from being in a place where you're working for someone else to starting a business. It's a very different mindset. And, not everyone can make that kind of transition. But I think, I think the challenge there is sort of like, how do you actually grow it? That is the real challenge, I think, in certainly the restaurant business, is because growing is the hard part. You need to be able to like manage people, build teams, get other people to do the work that normally you would do, because like I can't be at every restaurant. I have other things to do, like run a public company. And what I mean? Even though I'd love to be there, I don't have time to watch every burger that goes out, and that kind of stuff. So the question is like, how do you scale it and maintain the integrity of the original business? Because what often happens when people scale businesses is everything kind of falls apart. Your quality goes down, your service goes down, your reviews go down, and all that kind of stuff. So, and what we're seeing, certainly in our reviews, is the opposite is happening. Our reviews are better now than they've ever been. The more restaurants we open, the better our reviews get. So it's a symbol of I think our success in scaling. And to be fair, we put a lot of effort into that beforehand, and it's actually it's hard to hold yourself back from growing. Sometimes you have to wait until you have those systems in place to grow, and it can be frustrating because you kind of see maybe some of the people in the space, and they're how are they growing so quickly? They launched 5 restaurants. I've only launched 1. But the thing is, if you're investing in the systems and the technology and all that kind of stuff, then you can go to 100 restaurants and maybe they can only get to 10. So I think by investing in that, you're really kind of like setting yourself up for that future growth. So that's the hard part, is developing the systems, developing the technology, developing the, is sort of managing that growth and being able to do it at the right time.
And I guess part of that as well is the investment, like being able to invest. And I know obviously capital and funding is always a big thing for businesses. Can you tell us a bit about how the business has been funded? Obviously, you went public in April this year, as we know, but before that, how was the business funded and why?
Well, I mean, it started out by it was just my wife and I primarily investing, putting our own money into it. Obviously, that's where I think all businesses mostly start, right? It's blood, sweat, and tears. But we got an investor fairly, a couple years ago when we were launching a manufacturing center, and again with the vision of scaling it, right? And that was the sort of the pitch, I guess, right? So, and I think we just kind of you just kind of build off of your success, right? It's like, okay, you set your milestones, we hit our milestones, and then you kind of reach those and you get more investment. So a lot of our investment was, just angel investing initially, right? Also some friends and family, but actually the friends and family investments came later on. We actually got investors first, and friends and family actually joined. They actually came on board more in the like IPO stage for us. They actually came on later. Maybe they didn't think we could pull it off.
They wanted some proof.
Right. Yeah, but I guess we sort of proved. I guess they were like, okay, like it's ready now. You're going public, and we're ready to invest. So it was kind of maybe that's a kind of a funny situation, but yeah, that's kind of how it was for us. And then obviously going public for us was a big, that was our biggest amount of capital we raised. Yeah, which I mean, to be fair, still isn't that much capital. We were pretty conservative when we raised.
Lovely. And we'll talk about going capital in a second. Do you think it helped, like the fact that you got an investor quite early on? Do you think it helped that you even though you had this big vision of scaling, and I know a lot of investors do want to, they don't. I know a lot of investors say, I don't want to invest in just a single restaurant. Like I want to see the option for scaling. But do you think it helped that you had both that vision for scaling, but also that you were starting local in Ontario and not kind of going, right, I want to open one in New York, or I want to crack this international market and this international from the beginning?
Well, for sure. I mean, again, this is it's part of like, I think it's part of that like idea of like, are you building a real business or are you just building a business to raise capital? And I think there's two strategies there. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I mean, a lot of people sort of just raise a lot of capital on a vision and then build a business from that. And other people build a business, raise capital. I think we were very much on the side of like, we really believe in, number one, building a great business first. Building a business that we believed in, right? That we wanted, we only wanted people to invest in when we thought it was the right time. so and a time which would reduce risk for our investors, because I think we really kind of took it seriously. Like, we always really wanted our investors to do well, make a good investment in us, And I think along the way, what ended up happening is that was the case, because, with every kind of round, our valuation went up until the point where we got public, and, until the point we're at now. So I think that going through that journey with your investors, but us also, we are the biggest investors in our company, so we are the most invested, right? We have the most to lose. And I think it's an important thing as if you're investing in a company, you know that the people running the company are, the founders, and they have everything to lose. They're going to fight the hardest for their own investment and yours, right? And I think it's important. I think sometimes what can happen when you raise a lot of money early on, you give up a lot of that ownership, a lot of control.
Yeah.
Now you only own 2% of the company. Do you care that much what happens to the company if you only own like 1 or 2%? I mean, maybe, because you're doing it for ethical reasons, which is great. I'm not saying that, just because you own 1 or 2%, you don't care. But I think that when you own 50%, you care a little bit more than when you own, 1%. So you have more skin in the game, so to speak. I think it's there must be a vegan way of saying that. There must be more, I don't know, skin on the apple. I don't know what it is. But anyway,
it's an interesting, No, I love that. I think you made some really interesting points there. I think that's really great. So why did you decide to go public? Because that brings with it its own challenges, and it's not cheap. I believe even on the Canadian stock market, it's still quite an investment. So why did you decide to go public?
I think for us, it was a lot of it was this idea of making sure that our vision was really unchanged and we were able to execute the vision. I always had such a fear of like giving up a huge amount of control to some VC, some venture capitalist organization who they just want to flip it and they'll sell your company to the highest bidder. And if it means like, hey, we got to put in some meat burgers in here, or throw a bit of cheese options for, dairy cheese options. Like, sort of like, I was always very worried about like people saying like, oh, if we can make an extra like 3% on our revenue, we'll throw all our values out the window, and who cares? You know what I mean? So we really, because it's not the reason we started the company. It's not the reason that we are here. We're not here to make money from it. We're here to, execute a vision and like make change, right? So I think for us, we just believe that when we went public, that number one, we could allow other people to join that easier, right? So instead of us raising a whole bunch of money from, some very rich, wealthy investors that, are part of like a venture capital group, giving your everyday average consumer the ability to invest in our vision and invest in our company and invest in us. That's what you get when you're a public company, because anyone can go out anywhere in the world and buy, $5 in shares in our company. There is no minimum investment. There is no barriers. There is nothing stopping anyone from putting their money into what we're doing. And that was very attractive to us, because I felt like it would actually keeps us more grassroots. It really does keeps our investor base actually more retail and more connected to our customers and to people who share our vision. And that was so important to us. So those are the reasons that I think we went public. And I think they were all great reasons for us.
Yeah. And what advice would you have, James, for any companies to know when they're ready to go public? Like, you obviously knew the time was right. Any advice and tips on how a business can go, okay, I think now we're ready?
Well, I think, I think it's actually kind of an interesting question, because, for us, it was kind of like, you have to also look at what's happening in the world and the market. And there's that element too. It's not just, hey, I want to go public. Like, it's also like, is the market like into what you're doing? Are the brokers like interested in this? Is it the right time? Because like, if we try to go public like say 2 years ago, like maybe it wouldn't happen. Or if we would have tried to go public 2 years from now, maybe it wouldn't happen. So a lot of it is the timing, and that timing is reflective. Like, what is the market like? What are the market conditions like? And I think it's something that, just with my background in finance, it was kind of advantageous, because I could see that the plant-based investment market was something that was really about to boom. So we wanted to sort of get into that and ride that sort of boom, and that sort of, because there is such an interest now, I think, in investing for sustainability, and we wanted to be part of that. We didn't want to kind of be like left out of that. So again, for us, it was kind of timing. We were doing the right thing in the right place at the right time, kind of a unique kind of concept, which is disrupting fast food through plant-based, our plant-based concept. So yeah, I think it's that question really would change for I think each company, but for us, that was the reason. If you're Beyond Meat or Just Egg, I think they would probably have a different reason for doing it, a different timing. Again, someone coming from this as not like a venture capital group, coming public, that's how we viewed it. I think they probably view things differently because they have a lot of VC funding in their organizations, which is nothing wrong with it, but they're going to have different reasons and rationales and timings for going public, because for them, they need to get a return, and typically VCs go public to get their money out. At least some of it, right? But for us, that wasn't the case. We still own all the shares that we had when we went public, and we don't plan on ever selling them. So that's kind of where we're at with that. That was a very different reason for us.
I love it. Now, I want to talk about the name, because you spent years building a brand called Globally Local. Did I say that right? Globally Local.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then you changed it. So you built up this audience, this brand, you got your social media and everything. And then you changed it. So first of all, why? And why to Odd Burger?
Well, yeah, the reasons why we're sort of multifaceted, but let me just start with this. I mean, we're obviously seriously looking at expanding into the U.S. market. So we're looking right now very, very actively for a site in Manhattan, and also other places in the States. So our goal is obviously to enter the U.S. market in a big way. So to be honest, the name Globally Local, we just did not have the trademark for it, and it was already trademarked in the food sector, and it would have been difficult for us to, I think, potentially use that name in the States. So that was the sort of practical reason why we did it. To grow, we needed a name that was, I guess, more unique, and Odd Burger was that name. So that was the one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it too was that we'd hired some really great branding companies, some companies that I worked with. One of them worked with the Toronto Raptors, which is obviously a big basketball team in the up here. So we worked with some really big branding companies to sort of look at what we do and look at our customers and say, what is the best way of connecting with our customers, and the customers, not just people that are vegan, but more importantly, people that aren't vegan, because we are primarily targeting people that have never tried plant-based food or have never tried vegan fast food, because that is the 98% of the market. We're targeting the 98% of the market. So the question is what is a brand that is going to communicate what we do? And what we do is our food is not your standard food. It is not your typical fast food. In a lot of ways, it's odd. It's very odd for someone that is. It's like, oh, I'm eating a vegan version of my favorite fast food, and that's something there's an intrigue there. And I think what it did is it allowed us to better connect with people that are not vegan. And I mean, since our launch, it's been really successful. I think it has had a positive impact. And I think it is a more memorable name and something that people can connect with more. And I think it's ultimately a better brand. And I think when you but it is such a hard decision to change your brand. It was probably one of the hardest decisions we've ever made, because here you are, we're a public company, we launched under this brand, and sort of the realization that we have to change it all now is super hard. But it's one of those decisions where you have to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and sometimes make the hard decisions early on, because it's going to get harder later on. It's hard to rebrand when you have 50 stores, and then you have to change all the signage, you have to change all your murals, and the cost. Rebranding is huge. For us, it was a great time because we were just down to one store at the time. We had closed one of our locations because we were moving it. So it was kind of the low point in the number of sites we had, and it was just a great time if we were going to rebrand, it was the best time to do it. So we sort of bit the bullet and we launched. It was super scary to announce because you have people that are like, oh, I hate the name, and why are you calling vegans odd? And you're horrible for doing that, and we're not odd, they're odd, But all that kind of controversy, in my opinion, is a good thing because it gets people talking about it, and it gets people that are vegan and not vegan talking, which honestly has always been our vision, our goal with Odd Burger. Like, let's get the discussion happening. So people are talking about it, you know what I mean? Because only through discussion and education are we going to get real progress. So, so I think that was kind of like, an interesting side benefit, but there's always like everyone has a strong opinion, oh, you should have called it this and you should have called it that. And you should, but there's a lot that goes into the name. And a lot of it is like, can you get the trademark? Can you get the domain name? Can you get can you get all those factors together? And can you actually use it? Because, it's easy to say, oh, we'll call it this, but is it actually, can you actually realize that vision? So in the end, for us, that was Odd Burger, and, we're super happy with it. I think we're excited for it to enter into the US market. I think it's something that the American consumer is going to love.
Was it challenging, for example, I know, for example, when you change a name, then on Instagram, for example, you lose that URL, because I noticed, if you go to instagram.com with Globally Local, it says, sorry, this page doesn't exist because now it's moved to Odd Burger. So how did you navigate, just hanging on to your existing customers?
Well, I mean, actually, when you change handles, so you don't lose your followers. So that's the main thing. So people that were following you before are they kind of switch over. So, but yeah, navigating all that sort of transition was hard because, you don't change your Instagram handle very often. At least I don't. So, there's a lot of sort of research and thought that goes into this stuff. And, I think I think for us, it was just a matter of really kind of researching and understanding, this is going to impact you, this is not going to impact you. How do we redirect our, people that are going to still type in globallocal.ca? How does that now redirect over to my.com? And, all those things to consider. Nothing incredibly hard about it, just a lot of little things to think about. So, and, and to be honest, we're still sort of catching things like, oh, it still says Globally Local on the footer of our allergy guide or something. There's always little spots where it's still existing, and it's okay, we're going to fix that. And we're always kind of we're always, looking for those little things that are still need to be fixed. But yeah, the rebranding process is a monstrous task, and don't do it unless you have to, unless you're in our situation where you just need to grow.
And especially if you've got a business with physical premises like you have, and the branding, you know what I mean? If you've got an online business, it's maybe a little bit easier. But like you said, if you had loads of stores and then all of the signage and the menus and, and all the physical stuff has to be changed, that's kind of even more of a monster to do. So
it's a huge task, but it's worth it. I think it's at the end of the day, if branding is so important, right? It is everything, right? And I think to have a good brand is necessary to really get to the next level, right? Because if your brand isn't great and your name isn't great, and then you're just not going to connect with the consumer in the way that others are. So it's really important to really spend a lot of time and effort in that brand. We spent so much time and effort, and we had incredible people that we worked with that helped us through our process, real professionals that were just, the best in the industry to kind of guide us, because it's not something that I would recommend people do on their own, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know you've shared some really good tips there. I think, particularly if people do want to scale and you want to go global, particularly around the domain name and the trademark and all that sort of thing, which you don't necessarily think about when you first think, oh, I'm just starting an initial small business. So I think that's really brilliant advice that you've offered throughout this, James. Is there anything you want to add? I know you've mentioned, I was going to ask you about, just finally to wrap up, about future plans. You've mentioned you want to hit the US market. So I'm curious, because you've got your own production facility in Canada, when you go into international markets, if you're going into the US, maybe you might go into the European market, do you foresee having your own production facilities and having to set those up in those different locations, or rather than trying to obviously ship everything from Canada?
Well, I think it's one of those things where, you kind of have to go in stages, right? Because, obviously you want to you want to make sure that you're reducing your risk, of course, but you also want to, want to sort of like get your feet wet, I think, in a new market, make sure that things are going the way you think they were and that kind of stuff. So for us, for example, when we launch in the States, we're most likely going to be shipping food from Canada to the States initially, even though the cost is going to be higher. Obviously, you're going to have higher shipping costs, and it's a factor. But the thing is, while we build that U.S. business, I'm very much in the mindset like let's let the data drive our decisions. You know what I mean? Like if the brand is loved in the U.S. market, if the food is loved, if it does really well, then let's put more investment into it. And if not, then let's evaluate why and figure it out. You know what I mean? Because
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So James, will the product, you said the shipping cost will be higher, shipping from Canada to the US. Will you as a business wear that cost, or will that mean the burgers or the food will be slightly more expensive in the US? And how do you make that decision?
Yeah, no, I think you always have to wear that cost as a business,
right?
In my opinion, because it's it's not fair to pass on to a franchisee, really. I mean, and the thing is, if it is a franchise business, but
or even to the end customer as well, even to the end
exactly.
customer.
And the thing is, price is so important with fast food. It's everything. Like $1 is like everything, right?
Yeah.
The difference between $5.99 and $4.99 is massive, right? People drive decisions on $1 all the time in fast food. So, for us to go into the US market and say, well, it costs us more, so now it's going to be $10 for a burger. Well, the model doesn't work anymore. So, you can't. You almost have to just accept, like, yeah, it's just going to cost us a lot more on the first one, but then by the 10th one, it's at that point maybe we build a U.S. manufacturing center, and then it's a lot less then. So you kind of like have these like higher costs for a bit, and then you increase your efficiency, and you maybe put a manufacturing center in somewhere, and then you lower them drastically. And I think that's the power of just really focusing on your revenue growth is so important as a young business. Like focus on the revenue growth, because like then you can like kind of later on go back and like, okay, we're going to do this to cut our costs by 50%, and all of a sudden now you're a super profitable business with lots of revenue, right? So, which is better to be. I mean, the other option is like you don't have much revenue, and then you're making money, but there's not much money there, total money, So I think it's all about sort of understanding that sort of like growth process.
Nice. Brilliant. You've shared so much helpful information, James. That's been wonderful. I think it's really useful for people to kind of get under the bonnet, or the hood, as I think you call it in America, of a business, for people to know that, because sometimes you can see people's success and think, oh, I have no idea how to do that. So I really appreciate that you've given some really helpful advice along those lines. So everyone, do check out Odd Burger, or if you're interested in opening a franchise with them, or just going in and enjoying one of their food products. It looks amazing. I looked at the menu earlier today and it was making me hungry. You can go to oddburger.com. If you're watching the video, that URL is scrolling along the bottom of your screen. And if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, that link will be on the show notes page. James, it's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to your global expansion. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and I would love to try an Odd Burger, but hopefully next time I'm in Canada or the US, I'll get to try them out. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's been great having you on the show.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye for now.